would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Well, I don't know what got everyone so excited yesterday, but yesterday's show went ballistic in terms of the number of folks who jumped in and listened and all that other kind of wonderful stuff. Maybe it was the title. I do not know. But thanks to all of you who have joined us as of yesterday. I truly appreciate it. If you are new, your timing is perfect because you are just in time to potentially win a $50 Amazon gift card. Now, we've given away 5 of these things so far, one each month, and we have not yet done March. So you're just in time to get your name into the hat to potentially get drawn to win that $50 Amazon gift card. Now, all you have to do is go on over to therebelbroker.com. At the top of the page, you'll see a little red button that says take the survey to support the show. You'll be asked twice for your email address. Use the same email address both times. Answer a handful of demographic-style questions, and you're done. You've helped to support the show, and you've also put yourself in a drawing to potentially win $50. The plan is to do the drawing on this Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific. So as long as your name, as long as you've made your submission prior to that, you will be in the drawing for March's $50 giveaway. And of course, any future giveaways, you'll be in the drawing as well, because I like to try to thank folks for taking time out of their busy day to help the show. Got a couple of interesting things today. We actually have one piece of good news. You know, I don't want people to start thinking all I want to do is talk about how the market's potentially not a great place right now. I have absolutely, over the course of years, talked about how important employment is. It's tough to get a loan, tough to service a loan, tough to make your mortgage payments if you don't have a good job. So we're going to talk about those numbers today because this is one of the first times I think the numbers are actually really good, even when you drill down into the details of them. Whereas before, everyone wanted to talk about how good the numbers were, but when you actually looked at the quality of those numbers, it wasn't that great. We have a turnaround this time, which I think is a good sign. I also wanted to share some personal experience here. It has yet to completely work itself out, but I think it's far enough along that I want to share it with you. I have been at each stage of the process of doing my home remodel in preparation for selling my property. I've been trying to share with you how I did it, the choices I made, those types of things. And one of the things that I decided to go with, and I'm still on the fence as to whether or not this particular update needed to be in the top 3. I ended up deciding that it did, but this was replacing the windows on the front of my home. And the primary reason for this is the whole front of my home for 2 stories is basically glass. And all of that is single pane glass installed in the 70s. And it's a huge drain on resources in terms of just not being very economical, not being very green, and frankly, making it very easy for cold air to seep out and hot air to seep out when you're in times of the year where you don't want that to happen, right? Not much insulation there on a single pane of glass. So I decided to go ahead and get those replaced. I went with 3 different bids, didn't pick the cheapest one, ended up picking the one that came down in the middle, but also used a well-known manufacturer's name, Milgard. I could have gotten a better deal from another company that makes their own windows, but in marketing, my buyers recognize the word Milgard, so that's why I did that. Now here's the update. I was checking in to find out what is the timeline is, what's going on, trying to figure out how things are going to proceed, and discovered that the company I went with that has been around for decades just has suddenly gone poof. They're not completely gone. I was able to talk to the owner and get some information on what was going on. And the bottom line is they cannot now service this. So I immediately contacted the credit card company that I used to make that initial payment to get the process started. That's all in the process of being worked out. And the owner of the company is handling things in a very proper way. I'm not getting any alarm bells that there's going to be an issue. The only issue may be that it doesn't happen on quite the timeline I was hoping, but I'm already lined up to get the work done. Most of the folks who used to work for that company, one of the guys that I was interacting with has gone back to doing his own company. It's a long, involved story, but I feel pretty good about it. I'm almost back to the point where I want to start considering other bids again from other companies. We'll see, but I wanted to give you that update. I'm not real sure what I could have done different to avoid a problem. This is one of those companies that was highly rated online from all the various, Yelp and all the other sites that rate these folks. I was only considering top-rated service providers when it came to doing this window work, and these guys just ended up, after years and years of very reliable service and very high rankings, just suddenly kind of disintegrated. So it can, no matter how careful you are, these things can snap up. The point, though, I think to learn from this is to be absolutely on it. You don't let a lot of time pass without you reaching out and contacting the people that you are communicating with relating to getting services done. If you start the ball rolling on something, if you're not talking to someone, I think weekly, prior to the job starting, just to get an update, I don't think you're being careful enough. Luckily for me, this ended up being a situation where literally almost as soon as it happened, I was able to find out. I did not become aware of this because someone called me. No one called me to say, all right, this company is sort of disintegrating, so this paperwork you have signed with us, it's probably not going to happen. It was my proactive phone call that got this resolved. I talked to the owner, I talked to the credit card company, and let the credit card company know the circumstances, and we haven't quite reached the end point where there's a 10-day window in which all of this stuff gets researched and then dealt with, and then my money comes back into my account. So there you go. I don't think it's going to be an issue. If it is an issue, of course, I'll give you an update. But just always be never more than a few days away from the last time that you talk to an organization that's going to provide service for a project you're working on until that job's done. I think that's really the only way to safeguard this stuff. I have no idea what would have happened if I just sort of sat here and whistled in the wind, waiting for the day to come when I was going to be expecting the call that they're ready to install my windows because they've arrived. That was all stuff that was supposed to happen this month in a couple of weeks, but not going to happen now. Or the windows have now been ordered from another. It's a little bit complicated. But anyway, once that's actually squared away, I've got another guy who's set to do it, and we may go that way. But again, I said I'm almost in the back of my head entertaining the idea of looking at some more providers. I'm not going to commit to anyone else until the money has reappeared in my account, and I would suggest you do the same. Make sure that any problems you've had with a previous provider, no matter what they were supposed to do for you, if you've decided that's not going to happen for some reason, make sure the finances of that are squared away before you financially commit to anybody else. Okay, so that takes care of that. Let's see. What are we talking about today? First on our hit list, I'm going to go ahead and start with the good news. Private sector jobs soar with a gain of nearly 300,000. This is from a late article yesterday, so this is hot off the presses. And there's good news in here because construction wasn't left behind with these numbers. We absolutely saw improvements. And remember what we've talked about with past numbers over the last couple of years, where we talked about unemployment numbers kind of artificially being increased because the people in the workforce was reduced, right? Not that there was actually a net gain in jobs, just the net number of people who were counted as not employed went down because they were considered no longer participating, right? So I'm not seeing any of that funky stuff going on. The other part was the quality of jobs we've seen over the course of the last, a pretty good number of years, have mostly been focused in not the kind of jobs where the career is the thing, right? Service industry jobs, bartenders, waitresses, jobs that people usually take when they're looking for some other job, when they're trying to achieve something else. These are the jobs you take when you don't have another job option, right? Typically, for the most part. So a lot of service industry stuff. Now, obviously, those kinds of jobs were represented in this, but I thought it would be good to look at these like we always do in terms of what jobs were created, because what's great is we are seeing job creation in a lot of other areas that tend to be full on, let's make a career at this. So the national resources and mining jobs increased by 8,000. Construction jobs increased by 66,000. That's a fantastic number. Manufacturing increased by 32,000. And that's the goods producing sector, and they added a total of 106,000 jobs. Outstanding. Now we go to the service providing sector, where some of the jobs that aren't so great are included, but good ones are in here too. And there was 193,000 jobs that were represented the increase in that area. Now, trade, transportation, and utilities increased by 9,000. Information increased by 25,000. Financial activities increased by 4,000. Here's a big one. Professional and business increased 66,000, which is excellent. Education and health increased by 40,000. Leisure and hospitality, which in the past was one of the bigger ones that tended to dominate, increased by 40,000. Other services, 9,000. So when you're looking at a foundation to build strong real estate, right? What makes a foundation of strong real estate? Well, at its core, in order for the business to happen, there need to be people who have enough money to buy a house. So jobs clearly underpin that portion of the foundation, right? The other is going to be sellers willing to sell and builders who have been willing to build. And as we've moved through now, the weak link in this, if this trend continues and we continue to see creation of jobs on this level in terms of the quality of the jobs and in terms of the areas of the economy that see the jobs getting increased, you are creating more buyers who are able to buy, and that's great. Not because you're artificially creating them by lowering the standards of lending, right? It would be much better to simply have people getting jobs where they qualify for a conventional loan, where that conventional lending scenario is rational because the folks they're lending to have not only a good credit history, but also now a good credit to debt, a good income to debt ratio. And the better the job, the better that ratio is going to be for the folks who need to get into housing. So the weak link continues to be housing manufacturing, but given these numbers, it sure does look like they are hiring. The home builders now seem to be taking an action that actually indicates they have confidence. Remember, we talked about this even a little bit yesterday. We have, for months and months, I've shared with you stories where, the home builder confidence rating was now up and everyone was singing the praises of the increased home builder confidence number. But none of the home builders were doing anything that you would do if you were confident about home building. None of them were hiring more contractors or building more homes. Now, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in terms of specifically what gets built. The emphasis still seems to be on apartment-style construction. We'll see if this new wave of hired construction folks are seeing their skills put to that kind of work, or is it going to be single-family residential-style housing, or is it going to be commercial-style buildings? We'll have to see. There's some news out there that indicates commercial is looking a little bit risky, so maybe that's not quite something that they'll want to jump into. But we'll see. I can't wait till we see the next story that comes out in terms of what are home builders doing in terms of what kind of permits are they getting, which will tell us what they're building. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break right now, but we will also jump into several more stories that I think are interesting for today's show. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909.
Welcome back, everyone. We just spent some time talking about the unemployment numbers, and I can't even remember the last time that we were able to talk about numbers like this when we were happy about them, right? So this may be it. This may be the very first time when we've looked at the details of an employment report and not only just looked at the overall number, but in looking at the details of what kind of jobs were created, came to the conclusion we were heading in a good direction. So this is a good thing. There was a bit of this last time as well. January's numbers were sort of in that mix. But really, this is the first. So it's encouraging. It's an encouraging sign. I'm happy to be able to say, even after looking more deeply at these numbers, I think this is good news. I think this is good stuff. The big question is going to be, what kind of pressure does this put on prices, right? As I said, I think one of the absolute cornerstones of a strong real estate market is a strong jobs market, right? With the right kinds of jobs that provide the right kind of income for folks to make it possible for them to participate in purchasing real estate. And let's say this is the beginning of what makes that happen. We have already seen a marketplace where the folks in the regulation side, the government side, all seem to believe that the solution to the real estate problem is to facilitate more buyers. Millions of times we've discussed on this show, that is not the solution to this problem. It is not. That is the way to increase prices, to increase demand without addressing the supply side at all. So what happens to prices? We spent some time talking yesterday about things that are going to be happening. They're going to push that demand higher and higher without even having increased income for folks, right? So this will increase demand because there will be more folks out there earning livings that can participate in the buying process. And we're also facilitating this weird scenario where the willingness to lend to subprime borrowers is being broadened as if that's a solution to the problem. And we end up with now more buyers per home for sale, which equals higher prices. So that's a little bit nuts. Here's another little bit of data that's interesting, I think, for us to think about. This one's from Housing Wire, as was the last article. And as always, for those of you who are interested in seeing the articles that I am drawing this data from, please feel free to visit the show notes over at therebelbroker.com. Every single show that gets published gets an entry right there at therebelbroker.com so that you can see where I'm getting these from. I'm happy to provide something that you can use to then go and maybe come to your own conclusions about this stuff, and then maybe share your conclusions and see what spin you might put on it that maybe I didn't consider. Okay, so. Average loan size for purchase applications hits an all-time high. This report also shows that adjustable rate mortgages hit the highest level since October of 2014, which is interesting. Because remember, that's another thing that happens, right? I had an email from a listener, I think it was today or yesterday, about, how come you're poo-pooing this idea that interest rates could potentially really slow down the market? The reasons I gave to that person were the same I've been giving, which are, we've already seen it. The reason I say that is because over the last 2 years, we've already seen higher interest rates, and we saw it do nothing to the demand for homes. Now, it may, even if it does affect the demand a little bit in terms of making folks back out of the market, which is absolutely the last thing that folks do, right? There's several things, intermediate things that buyers will do before they decide I'm not buying. We can talk about that in a second. But what happens is that folks will tend to adjust things that they can adjust before they finally make that decision to back away. So, as an example, they could decide to simply shop for a less expensive home by whatever amount that needs to happen. Because if the interest rate goes up, their lender will give them a new amount they'll finance for them, and then that's fine. That could mean they have to come up with more cash themselves if they've got it. If not, it simply means they have to suddenly search for homes that are less expensive if the increase in interest rates affects that. That tends to be one of the things people will do. Another thing that they will do is simply decide not to get a 30-year fixed mortgage. They will go with a adjustable rate mortgage. So it doesn't surprise me at all that we're seeing a big leap in the number of folks who are going for that adjustable rate mortgage. If they're seeing their ability to borrow so negatively affected, then they're going to go with a loan that's going to still allow them to borrow the same amount of money, but on an adjustable rate mortgage. That's a little bit creepy because you never know what's going to happen over the intervening years. And unless they know they're going to move before that adjustable rate mortgage adjusts, the new payments could be very, very painful for them. Let's see. So as we were saying, the average loan size has hit an all-time high, and this is from the Mortgage Bankers Association. It's the survey for the week ending March 3rd, 2017, and it showed that the average loan size for a purchase application was $313,300. Now, that's the highest number during any week since the MBA began conducting its weekly application survey in 1990. Overall, the MBA's report showed that mortgage applications also increased 3.3% from the previous week. The refinance index increased 5% from the previous week. So there's another interesting thing, right? We so many people want to get wrapped up in what interest rates are doing, but people are refinancing. If people are willing to that's a discretionary thing. And typically when people are refinancing, if it's not to take advantage of interest rates, and it may be, as I said, in past years, interest rates have been higher. So maybe they're doing that. We're close enough to some of the high points that it wouldn't make sense to do it that way. So what does that tell us? The fact that refinancing has peaked or has increased tells me homeowners are pulling money out of their homes. They're pulling equity out of their homes. The seasonally adjusted purchase index also increased 2% from 1 week earlier. So and also what's nuts about that, remember what we talked about, one of the other key things that we need to be worried about in terms of estimating where this market might go is the debt load. Well, if these folks are refinancing, given what rates are doing right now, they're probably pulling money out. So they're pulling up to 80% of the value of their home out in terms of having it as cash, which means higher risk, right? It potentially means, now granted, 20% is great. That gives us a lot of room for markets to fluctuate before someone finds themselves out of water or underwater. But it also means that there are more folks who may have had a whole lot of equity who would really have never felt threatened by a down market. But now you've put more of a hard number on it. You said, if the market were to go down for the conventional folks by 20%, particularly for folks who've gone ahead and refinanced, who may have bought years ago and had a whole lot more paid off, but felt like they needed to pull that money out for some other use. Suddenly we have a bigger pool of folks where with a big drop in property values are suddenly below, underwater in terms of what they owe versus the value of the property. And it really depends how much you believe a downturn might go in terms of how low. But it just means that the pool of folks potentially at risk is a little bit higher. Not a big deal. I'm far more worried about the FHA people who are doing 3.5% loans. I think that's a much bigger problem. But when you've got a lot of folks doing refinancing, it just kind of it puts more people hovering at a pretty hard number. And that's something I'd be worried about. If, let's say, this does happen and we start to see a downturn in the real estate market, as soon as we start to see a 20% loss in property values, that is a huge watershed moment. I think because suddenly you're hitting a whole lot of people, people who just recently purchased, people who refinanced recently, and clearly all those folks who got 3%, 2%, 1%, 0% down loans all fall into that matrix. And of course, the folks with the least amount of equity in their property, or the folks who are underwater, by the most are the ones who are going to act first to get out from under that. And we saw what they did last time, right? In 2008, we saw what people do when they get themselves in those circumstances. All right. The adjustable rate mortgage share of activity also increased to 7.7% of total applications. That's the highest level since 2014. Comparing the different loan options, federal FHA's share of total applications decreased to 11.8% from 12.3% the week prior. That's actually pretty good news. The Veterans Affairs share of total applications decreased to 11.6 from 11.7 for so basically flat. Same number of vets doing their thing as other folks. The report also showed that the average contract interest rate for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage with conforming loan balances, $424,100 or less, increased to 4.36%, up from 4.3%. So again, not a huge increase, a 0.06 increase, but enough to be worth figuring out the math. The average contract interest rate for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage with jumbo loan balances greater than that limit of $424,100 also increased, climbing to 4.27 from 4.23. The average contract interest rate for 30-year fixed rate mortgages backed by the FHA increased to 4.18 from 4.07, while the average contract interest rate for the 15-year fixed rate mortgages increased from 3.51 to 3.57. The average contract interest rate for a 5/1 adjustable rate mortgage also rose from 3.35 to 3.48. So, and remember, for most of these, we saw increases in general in purchasing. We know from yesterday's show that we're starting to see millennials saying they're confident, saying they feel like homes are going to be worth more in the future. Two things that come together to say, if I could buy a house, I would buy a house, since I believe I'm confident about what's coming down the road. I feel good about the job situation. I feel like real estate will be worth more a year from now. These are all the things that they're saying are bouncing around in their head. So that seems like what's moving, right? And they're also going, by and large, for FHA loans. They're going for that 3.5% down payment. Okay, next. It is estimated that a March rate hike are now virtually guaranteed. With the employment numbers and everything else, March rate hike odds have upticked to near certainty. The Fed funds futures now imply a 100% chance that the Fed hikes next week, which is interesting. Remember, we've already talked about how the Fed does not have a direct effect through raising the prime rate to interest rates you're going to pay on your mortgage. When those rates go up, though, you will see an uptick because of the uncertainty principle, right? We talked about that before, where no matter what happens, after the Fed raises the rate, mortgage rates go up. They usually go up for a week or two. That's every single time. Just for some background, this theory has held water every time it's happened over the last couple of years. It goes up a little bit for a week or two, then calms back down usually to where it was, and sometimes it even goes lower than where it was before. The thing you want to look for is what's going on with the 10-year Treasury note. Now, what's interesting is this particular time, if I'm not mistaken, the last time I looked, 10-year Treasuries were actually up a little bit. So that might end up being something you want to look at more in terms of trying to estimate where rates are going to go versus what the Fed's going to do. Let's see. The Fed's forecast for GDP collapses, so the odds of a rate hike soar. That's kind of an interesting one. And again, there'll be a link to this. This is a Zero Hedge story. So of course, it's always, any news is bad news when it comes to the folks at Zero Hedge. But I think this is something that actually holds a lot of water. I think given the employment numbers that have just come out, given where we are, and the perceptions and the confidence numbers, all the other things and the stuff we talked about yesterday, I think the Fed will, in fact, raise rates in March. And I think it's also the first time that they may raise rates more than a quarter of a point, or a quarter of a basis point. So keep that in mind. They may actually raise it a half a basis point or somewhere between those two. It almost feels like this would be a scenario where they would want to go for a more aggressive view, or at least take the stance of a more aggressive faith in what's going on in the economy to raise the prime rate. So we'll keep an eye out for that. When that does get decided, of course, we'll share that information here with you on the show. And finally, here's one that's a little bit creepy. This one's from U.S. News and World Report's. New programs offer low down payment and rate options to first-time home buyers. Yet another sort of brick in the wall as it relates to this idea that all we need to do is create more buyers, facilitate more people being able to buy. And I thought it would be good to take a look at this one. They make some interesting comments just sort of right off the top here. If you're a first-time buyer, making the leap to home ownership in 2017 could be an affordable dream come true. The economy is performing at its best level since 2009, with gains in wages, low unemployment, and the highest levels of job growth on record. And although home prices have risen as the economy has grown and housing demand has increased, new mortgage programs specifically for first-time home buyers are offering low mortgages, low down payments, or low mortgage rates, low down payments, low closing costs, and other opportunities to put home ownership within reach for those looking to buy now. They bring up here that the days of the mandatory 20% down payment are over. I would argue that's not a good thing. For those who have smaller amounts of money saved or who carry sizable student loan debt, the best news is that today's first-time buyer affordability programs allow qualified buyers to put as little as 3% down, thereby removing the biggest obstacle to home ownership, amassing a substantial chunk of cash. Lower down payment requirements coupled with low mortgage rates allow for more flexibility in qualifying for a loan and increase the opportunities for finding a home that truly meets your needs. This article goes on to quote a statistic that 63% of millennials are considering purchasing a home within the next 2 years, and plan to take advantage of these kinds of programs. First-time buyers represent the fastest growing segment of the mortgage business. Many lenders are creating programs that consider today's social and economic realities as well. Fannie Mae has its Home Ready mortgage program for first-time home buyers and current homeowners, which not only provides low down payment terms, but also the option to use relatives or roommates' income to help qualify for the loan. This shift to mortgage sharing is not at all unusual. According to TD Bank's Mortgage Service Index, almost a quarter of Americans share a mortgage with someone other than a spouse. And when it comes to millennials, this number nearly doubles with 42% sharing mortgages. Let's see, 30-year, 15-year fixed rate conventional mortgage, adjustable mortgages, and government loans. Let's see here. Now, the rest of this article actually is more of a pitch. It's more of a, hey, there's awesome stuff here, great opportunities for first-time home buyers. Don't worry about that down payment. Don't worry about interest rates, all these other types of things. You can read it for yourself. There will be a link to it in the show notes for today's show, so feel free to head on over to therebelbroker.com to check that out. So still some kind of interesting data out there, particularly as it relates to the conversation we had yesterday. Are we recreating the 2007 housing bubble? There's an awful lot of evidence that seems to point us in that direction. And we still are in that situation where, just as we did before, we facilitate a huge number of buyers without having that supply there. The big interesting thing that's going on now is we're just not seeing the levels of construction, but we're seeing the levels of buyers out there being bloated each day, not only with different programs, but also with loan opportunities that are encouraged by the current legislation and Fannie and Freddie and FHA and all those folks that are out there. All right, folks, I hope that update has been valuable for you. Of course, my goal each and every day is to make sure you walk away with more valuable information than the time it took you to listen to the show. I do thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you all next time.